I'm Connie Carreker, Chairman of the Mad Hatter's Tea for 2004. And I want to give you a warm welcome today as we honor the Heritage Ladies of 2004. So join me as we go back into history and we see the significance that each one of these Heritage Ladies has played for the history of this wonderful Arboretum. Nell Denman. What a special place this is, isn't it?
Isn't it? It's just beyond your imagination.
How did you ever get involved in the Women's Council and the Dallas Arboretum? And
I got involved because I thought that you needed to have, and the city of Dallas needed to have a place, an educational facility for plants. We moved here from Richmond, Virginia, and with the different growing conditions, I called the chamber and asked if there was an arboretum or a botanical garden in Dallas, and the little girl who answered the phone said, "A what?" So the first opportunity we had, we went to the North Dallas Chamber and asked if they were interested in going to the park board and asking for land for an arboretum or botanical garden. That Dallas was the only city of its size that had neither. And then after we moved out on this property, we realized we had we decorated the DeGarrier house for Christmas, and we decorated the camp house for Christmas. We realized we needed a support group. Mrs. McDermott and Doris, Anton, and Virginia Nick came up with the idea of the Women's Council. And we were in Doris Anton's living room organizing the Women's Council. And from that, it grew.
it just kind of grew.
And it's amazing. The membership has quadrupled since we first started.
And what's the purpose of the Women's Council?
It's a support group. I mean, the fact that we have this wonderful garden, Women's Council garden, is evidence of the value of a Women's Council. Because we wouldn't have this garden if it hadn't been for the Women's Council. They're go-getters, the Women's Council.
Did you and Ralph Pincus go to the city council now?
We never went to the city council. We went to the park board. And we kept going back to the park board. And we wanted both. An arboretum is just a garden with trees and shrubs and woody plants. And we wanted the botanical part. So we wanted both. And the park board was not very receptive. Ralph Pincus and I, and Garden Rose, but mostly Ralph and me. But we kept going back to the park board, and they would give us. They'd say, "Well, what about this land?" And we'd go out and look at it, and it would not be suitable. And then finally, we learned that SMU had to sell this property that Mr. DeGarrier had willed to SMU. And so we went to the park board and said, have the city council put this on the bond election. And we told them all the advantages of having a facility like this. And they put it on the bond election, in the October bond election, and it carried. And then later, the Arboretum bought the camp property and then donated it to the city so that the two properties could be joined.
Well, I am so thrilled to have you as my honorary chair this year. There's nobody more deserving than you.
Well, you don't know how thrilled I am to be the honorary chair, and I feel real flattered. I feel like there are a lot of people who should be the honorary chair other than me, but I do thank you.
Margaret, what time of your life did you really get involved with the Arboretum, and just what did it mean to you?
Connie, it was in the late 1970s. Ralph Rogers took me to the camp house for a first time. Roberta Camp's home had been unoccupied since her death. The wonderful DeGarrier house had lacked funds all that time for its upkeep. Bottom line, those two fine houses, DeGarrier and Camp, and the property, 40+ acres surrounding the homes, were in disarray. They were overgrown, they were tumbling down, yet the houses and the grounds were so beautiful. They had such potential, architecturally, landscape, the view. That potential, has it been nourished, fulfilled? You bet. Just last week, on one of my regular Arboretum visits, there was pride in the beauty, of course, but the hundreds and hundreds of guests of all ages who were enjoying the spring greatness. There were children, of course, old people, people in wheelchairs. It was a realization of dreams come true. Now, who were these first dreamers? Who brought this beauty, were the first ones to bring this beauty to our town? I want to briefly mention the founder, Ralph Rodgers, with two other pioneers, just two, Nell, Denman, Virginia, Nick. We could never thank them enough. And in closing, I've got to speak with great pride of the enduring pioneer group, the Dallas Arboretum's Women's Council. What generosity, what work, what accomplishments these ladies have brought to the Arboretum and to Dallas. I am more than proud to have had any part, any small part of their program, and thank you.
Businesswoman and philanthropist Virginia Nick, whose civic pride and passion for cultural growth in Dallas was one of the founders of the Dallas Arboretum and Botanical Garden. She strongly believed that you do not simply live in a community, you live and work for a community. And did she ever? No was not in her vocabulary. Once she began a project, nothing would stand in her way of getting it accomplished. Many of her favorite projects involved the Arboretum. Her first task was to organize civic-minded women to work hard to raise funds and increase community awareness for the Arboretum. When asked how she was always able to have such eager, hard-working volunteers, she replied, "I always work side by side with them, for I would never ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do myself." A humble woman, she did not like awards or accolades. In 1993, her suggestion for her obituary was said to be, "I want one sentence," quote, that she was born in this great city of Dallas, and she hopes everyone will continue to preserve its heritage and keep it growing strong as much as she tried to do. "That's all I want," she said. "That's all I want said about me." Well, Ebby Halliday Acers, it's so good to have you here today.
Thank you, Connie. It's nice to be here. And with your charm, without it, I wouldn't have been here. But
Well,
I'm so delighted to have this opportunity
Well, I am too.
to talk about, I think, one of the real treasures of this city, the Arboretum. It's a wonderful showplace for the citizens in all walks of life. And some of our prominent citizens have been so generous.
What inspired you to get involved with the Arboretum?
I served on the park board years ago, about the time that this property became available from the DeGaulias, and I served as president of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber was very interested in having a facility of this kind. And that was when I became interested, and that's been some 40 years
That was,
ago.
yeah.
And then Connie comes along, people like you who take on the chairmanship of the Mad Hatter's Tea, and that keeps interest going. We have keeps the volunteers involved.
You were going to say something about the people that got involved years ago.
Yes, Nell Denman was one of them, as she was president for years and years of the North Dallas Garden Forum, and also a member of the North Dallas Chamber. So she's the one that got the chamber interested. It started from there.
Yes, yes.
And then Ralph Rogers came to town, and he was a big booster, of course, because Mary Nell, his wife, was the niece of Mrs. DeGaulier. So many of our outstanding citizens have their names all over the park.
Oh, yes.
And then we get around to the food for the soul, which is the Arboretum.
Mimi Leigh Hodges, so glad that you could be here today. And I just want to talk to you about the Arboretum and what it's meant to you, being involved with the Women's Council.
Well, I love gardens and flowers. Had one of my own that I thoroughly enjoyed. So I thought it would be fun to have a garden.
Tell us the story about the first time you ever came out here.
I think I came one night late afternoon with Virginia, and went in the camp house a while and saw all the plans. And I just more or less got excited about it. As time went on, it developed that I wanted to put a garden in. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad I did it.
And there is a garden here named Mimi's Garden.
Well, it's a lay ornamental garden. But the workmen said while they were working on it, could they call it Mimi's Garden? And I said, sure, I'd be flattered. A year or two after they put my garden in, I didn't think it was very pretty. My garden was supposed to be a garden that had things in it that would grow in Texas soil. And nothing grows in Texas soil, and it's been wonderful to see it grow and what it's come to. It's really beautiful.
How has the park changed since the beginning?
Oh my goodness. There's hardly anything left like it was then.
Did you ever think that the Arboretum would get this big?
Yes. I knew it would be beautiful someday.
Mary Nell Rogers,
Yes.
isn't this a beautiful place?
It is a lovely place. I think Aunt Nell would have been very happy with what the Arboretum has done.
And who is Nell?
I was named for her. I was named for Mary Pearl, who lived in Tulsa, and Nell DeGaulier, who lived in Dallas.
And Mrs. DeGaulier lived in the DeGaulier house here on the campus
Correct.
of the Arboretum. Isn't that wonderful? Did you used to come out here and
Oh, yeah.
play when you were a young girl, or was it
I
later?
was never that young.
Never?
Never, but I did come and have lunches or dinners on that big porch that's in the back.
Oh, how wonderful.
And it was a beautiful view of the lake, and she was quite proud of that. It is lovely. It's a beautiful spot, and I'm sure that Aunt Nell would enjoy being back, seeing what has happened to the Arboretum. It's all important, and it's very close to Dallas. It's a beautiful place to be.
Doris, Anton, tell me, how did you get involved with?
Back in the late 70s, I was asked to be on the board of directors of the Dallas Arboretum and Botanical Society. And there we were, month after month, coming to the same meeting over and over again. They were really short on funds. Nobody wanted to come out here because they were afraid of the area. And there was no publicity. So I said, they asked, does anybody have any ideas? I stood up and said, well, what this group needs is a women's auxiliary. the room got stone quiet. And then at the end of the meeting, here comes Virginia Nick. And she says, Doris, about this organization that you want to start. And I said, oh, Virginia, I'm not sure I'm the right one. And she says, if you will get it up and get started, I will see that I will, and my good friend Margaret McDermott will be your sponsors. So that's how Margaret and Virginia got to be our founders of the Women's Council. And I got to be the first president for a couple of years.
And what about the Mad Hatters? Did you ever do anything out there?
Oh, well, yes. Scotty Buter was president, and she says, Doris, we just got to think of some way to get our membership out to the Arboretum more. They're just not coming out here. But it was a coincidence, but Doris Dixon had just chaired a big fundraiser, and Scotty and I were on her committee. So at the end of it, she was saying a great big thank you to all of her committee, and she had this Mad Hatters Tea Party over at the Anton Hotel. And so when we thought, well, maybe we'll ask if we can borrow her theme and have the Mad Hatters out here, which is what we did. Carole and Brad made the first Mad Hatters tea chairman, and she had her Frank Olive hat man come down, and I mean it was a bang right to begin with. Everybody loved it, loved it, loved it. Now it's one of our major fundraisers. I promised Virginia I would not leave.
Ever, ever. Oh, how wonderful. And Virginia was one of the founders too.
She was a fabulous, fabulous woman. I mean, she was always there for everybody. She was always in the background. She and Margaret both, they were both in the background, but if you needed something, you talked to those two ladies, it was there, just like that.
Doris, share with us some history of the camp house.
When we first got here, we were having our meetings at the camp house, and they had to machete their way from from Garland Road up to the front door because it was all bamboo. Apparently, the camps and the DeGoriers didn't quite get along, so they had planted all this bamboo, and then you couldn't see the two houses. So when we macheted our way up to the front door, and then you had to back out because there was only one way to get back out. And when the DeGoriers passed away, they they gave their property, the DeGoria 44 acres and the house, to SMU. And SMU says, whoop-de-doo, we have a great thing here, but what are we going to do with it? So they sold it to the city for, would you believe, $2 couple million.
What a magnificent sculpture.
Oh, isn't that pretty? But I thought it was kind of charming. And Margaret McDermott was on the committee that chose it, and she has a wonderful taste in art. Then Shelby Marcus was also on the committee, and she also has a fantastic collection of sculpture and art in her home. So between the two of them, and it was not the Women's Council that got to choose this, it was the DABS committee and their board, and these two ladies just happened to be on the board of directors, so they were asked to be on the committee that chose this and a few other things, and this is just one piece here. So, and of course, this is how we decided to get our underwriting money for the endowment, to sell off different features in our garden, and this was just one of the features.
I know your late husband, Kurt, was very involved with the Arboretum. Was he as interested in gardening as you?
Now, he was not a flower man. I mean, he was a very, very generous man, but he would walk out every year. I had 5 gardeners at the big house and me, and he would walk out every fall, and I was out there shoveling these leaves around. He says, Doris, it's called man against leaf, and leaf wins every time.
You have just been so much a part of making this what it is today, and you've just spent so many hours and so many wonderful years preparing and doing things and serving and being on the Women's Council at the Dallas Arboretum. And tell me how you got interested in that.
There were a group of women that got together to save the DeGaulier home from destruction, and they were called Friends of the DeGaulier. And so we organized a group of ladies and did some parties and did some fundraising, and then of course the Arboretum started up, and it was just sort of a step forward to go on into the Women's Council.
Tell us how the fundraising got started.
I did the first fundraiser, and we did it here at the DeGaulier house.
Really?
And we had zero budget to do it with. But it was a lot of fun, and we had a great time. We had one table in the dining room, and that was all. So we each bought something and did a wonderful party here. But no furniture, The gardens had not been cleaned. We only had the dining room table that had been contributed back to the DeGollier home. It was after, well, 2 or 3 years before the furniture, or some of the furniture, started coming back to the DeGollier home. I support everything these ladies do, and my congratulations to you for doing such a wonderful job this year.
Thank you very much.
Never to have really, I guess you have never been a chairman?
No, I've never chaired anything in
Never
this
chaired
city.
an event. You are doing fabulous.
Thank you very much.
And we're so proud of you.
Thank you.
We really are.
Do you feel that the Arboretum is important to Dallas?
It carries us forward into years to come, that this edifice can be enjoyed by many, many people here in Dallas.
Yes.
And it will live on long after we're gone.
Oh,
and
yes.
it's something we can all be proud of.
Liz Minyard, outstanding businesswoman, philanthropist, and leader in the community. How did you become involved in the Arboretum?
Well, I first got involved in the Arboretum actually when it was founded back in the 80s, when the city of the Dallas came together with the Friends. I think then it was called the Friends of DeGollier. And I was asked to be on the board, and kind of saw it through the opening stages, and then the women's group was formed, and joined and became involved in that. I love to go out to the Arboretum because I don't even feel like I'm in Dallas. It's so peaceful, and the view over the lake, and get the skyline of Dallas in the background, and it's just very beautiful. It's been exciting to watch all the different gardens open one by one, and to see how it's the master plan and how it's all come together. It's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed it.
I'm noticing here that this was one of the hats that won, and
yes, it was. I think I won in '92 with this hat.
Isn't that the cutest?
It was a challenge to walk down the runway, because back then we had a runway there at the Arboretum, and the Mad Hatters was always outside.
We've noticed that over the years that Minyard's has always dedicated and given to the cause of the Arboretum, and we so appreciate that so much.
Well, we love the Arboretum, and any event that's out there that we can help. I think it's there again helping to raise money for the expanded women's garden, the next phase of the women's garden, because there's still, as beautiful as it is, there's still more to be done.
Right.
And so if we can help in that effort, we're happy to do that.
That's wonderful. Patricia, tell us how your involvement in the Women's Council began.
Well, I'm a charter member of the Women's Council, which was begun in 1982, founded, of course, as you know, by Virginia Nick and Margaret McDermott. And prior to that, I was even a member of the Friends of DeGollier. In 1982, we began the Women's Council, and we've been, of course, going strong ever since. And in 1986, when we decided it was time for us to move forward into having a garden sponsored by the Women's Council, within the Arboretum. So that's when we started setting aside our money to build the Women's Council garden, and started construction in 94, 95, and opened in 97. It's it's our gift to the city of Dallas and all the people and the visitors who come to the Arboretum.
Can you describe Phase 1 and 2 of the Women's Council gardens, as well as future plans, Patricia?
Phase 1 and 2, of course, composes the Women's Council garden. And our designer, Morgan Wheelock, he describes it as yin and yang of a woman. The Phase 1, which is already opened, of course, is the yin, the bold, outward importance of a woman with all of the hardscape, the water features. The Phase 2 will be the yang, which is the mothering, the nurturing, the more of the introspective part of a woman, as opposed to the outward of Phase 1. Our next project to be the Red Maple Rill, which adjoins our property to the north. So that will be our next project. Red Maple Rill is the area that comes down from the outside of the camp house, outside on the south side of the concert lawn, and it's envisioned to be a beautiful red maple rill with numerous species of red maples and water.
What about educational opportunities for children?
The educational aspects are great here. Our educational director has done a super job of bringing all kind of educational facets into the Arboretum. And of course, with the completion of the north end, which will include the children's garden, that will be a much greater opportunity for children to take part and do a lot more things than they do now.
How did the Women's Council go about funding the restoration of the DeGoyer and camp houses?
We've had wonderful gifts of financial support from Mrs. McDermott in many ways in the houses to help replenish them and help them look like they did and they should look of when they were built.
In your opinion, what is the most important aspect of the Arboretum?
Volunteers have always been one of the most important facets of the Arboretum. It could not run without the volunteers.
And the first tea, I hate to tell you, the tickets were $35 a ticket to come. That's been quite a change too.